And a quick introduction to the Fireside Chat series. So this is the first in a series that we're going to be running. And I'll just explain a little bit about how it came about. So we've just published a book called Mentoring Entrepreneurs, The Insider's Guide to Shaping Success. Thank you, Nigel, for flashing it up. And our aim in writing that book was really to collect knowledge and to really create a very practical guide for mentors, so existing mentors, people who were interested in becoming mentors, and really drawing on the expertise and experiences of existing mentors. And I sometimes describe mentoring a little bit as a closed box or a black box. It's a relationship between two people, and it's sometimes difficult for an outsider to see how that's happening, what's happening in the relationship, and how change is happening, and how mentors have a positive impact on their mentees. So when we were researching the book, we interviewed almost 30 mentors and some mentees to really get their insights, to learn from them, and to really shape the content of the book. And I found the conversations, the one-to-one conversations we had, really insightful. And we couldn't capture everything from the conversations in the book. It does come across in kind of quotes and case studies, but there was so much richness there that we thought it would be really interesting to share that and to go beyond kind of the one-to-one and have a bit more of a dialogue with some of the mentors who contributed to the book. So this is the first in a series. So we've got Nigel and Linda with us today. And just a very quick introduction to them. So Linda Shuma is the co-founder of Women and Girls Empowerment. So it's a community-based organization in Mombasa, working within the coastal counties since 2014. Women and Girls Empowerment runs its programs around education, mentoring, and life skills. And so Linda joined one of our programs, our Imarisha program in Kenya. I think it was back in 2019, if I'm not mistaken, running mentoring. So she was a mentor on that program, and she received formal training from us before she then had a year-long relationship with her mentee. And she is passionate about having everyone, especially women, children, and youth, attain their highest potential and live out their purpose in life. So thank you, Linda, for being with us today and also having contributed to the book. Nigel is based in the UK and has 20 years experience starting, growing, and establishing an award-winning outsourced employee training, retail, and sales company. So kind of an entrepreneur by background, with a lot of experience there, who then came to entrepreneurial leadership coaching, is a mentor, and also has a PhD in coaching and mentoring. So he has a lot of insight and experience, a lot of time thinking about mentoring. So I always find conversations with Nigel very insightful and take me off in lots of different directions. So thank you both for being here. Before we kick off with the conversation, I think there's just a quick poll. We're really keen to see who you are and what has brought you here today to the webinar. So what curiosity has brought you here today? So there's a link in the chat. So if you click in there.
Let me share the link, if I can find it. Yes, so please go on Menti, on this link directly, and fill in your answer. The question is, why did you choose to attend this webinar? And so, yeah, that would be interesting. Thank you. So we have, I'm just curious, looking to strengthen my mentoring skills. Great. Give a few more seconds for Okay. Oh, we have 3 mentoring program managers in the audience.
Yeah, really interesting.
Great. Thank you very much. Over to you, Maya.
Yes, so so we're going to run this very much as a kind of open conversation. We have a couple of questions prepared, but we'll see where the conversation takes us as well. As the audience, we invite you to put questions in the chat as they come up. We will try to address them as we go through the conversation. Otherwise, we'll have some time at the end also where you can jump in with your conversations. And this is the first in a series. So Hannah will share the other webinars that we'll be running. So some of the questions might be more linked to some of the other topics we'll be covering. So we'll share that also at the end. So yeah, really over to you. Nigel and Linda, I'm really keen to hear your journey into mentoring and how you came to the space of mentoring in the first place, and yeah, what your journey to mentoring is. Maybe we can start with you, Nigel.
Okay, that's fine. If it's not ladies first, that's fine. It's wonderful to see you all. Thank you for the opportunity to come in as well, the Human Agent, to discuss this and explore mentoring and some of the insights that we've generated along the line. It's a subject matter that I can talk about forever. So please be aware that Maya or Suhana might cut me off at any point because I'll just carry on talking. So the experiences where we started, my mentoring experience started when I was very, very young. I was lucky enough when I was in a junior manager to have a mentor who basically changed my life. And he changed my life on the premise and the basis that he spent time with me and he cared about what I was trying to do. There was little more to it than that. He was a senior manager, and I think I explained to Maya the other day, the way I explained his mentoring approach was to drop a pebble in the pool and let the ripples take effect over days. So I might walk out of a meeting with him where he's grabbed me, sat me down, talked to me for a while, and then I'll walk out of the meeting thinking I haven't got a clue what's going on. And 3 days later, suddenly the idea came in my mind, or something that actually could help me take control of a situation. Because when you're young and when you're in an environment where you're on a leadership learning program and everything's new, having somebody that's an advocate and an ambassador for you is really important, I find. And that made a real difference to my whole career, my whole outlook on my life. And since then, all the way through, just to finish off my point, all the way through, I look for mentors. I'm involved in a new project now, which is putting me totally out of my comfort zone. And the first thing I did was I went back to somebody that I knew years ago in academia and said, would you be my mentor? And he said, luckily enough, he said, yes, of course I will. So for me, the mentoring relationship is a lifelong journey. And it's something that helps at every stage. And as long as you enter into those relationships with an open mind, with a view to it's always in your best interest, or you're always working in somebody else's best interests, it's the perfect concoction for today's world of this complexity in which we live. So that's my sort of overview and where I've come from. And over to you, Linda.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Nigel. Very interesting question. How did I find myself in mentoring? I think for me, life brought mentoring my way. I can't say that I really did have a mentor. Just as I moved along in life, but I did find myself mentoring in very strange ways before I could actually even put a name to what I was doing. I seemed to be walking along with a few people in life through different programs. And it's only about probably 12 years ago that I actually could put a name to it and say that I'm actually walking a mentoring journey with a couple of people through different programs I was running, be it in church and just as I lived life, I found myself working with different people, especially youth and teens. You mentioned that I ran a community-based organization. I am actually not trained in sociology, but I have found myself in a sociology space, carrying out mentoring. I trained in business. But yeah, so life actually just placed me there, and I found myself walking the mentoring journey as I have gone along.
Thanks, Linda. I think that's quite interesting because we actually kind of what I experience, or having talked to a lot of people who are mentors, there's kind of two camps. There's the people who come to it at a very kind of at a young age, where they have had a mentor themselves and they really see the value that that has had on their own life. But that also enables them to have kind of a mental mind map of what a mentor is. And how to be effective as a mentor. And then, and we also see this quite a bit in our programs, that people will, once they have had an experience of being a mentee and see the value of it, then they're keen to go ahead and become a mentor as well, and kind of to give back. So you kind of get this circular nature of mentoring, and hence partly the title of the talk. And then other people like you, Linda, a lot of us haven't had the luxury of having a mentor at a young age. We probably had people in our lives who maybe have informally taken on that role, but we couldn't necessarily name it. But then you might come to that because of your nature of your work or what you're doing, and then you have some training in it, kind of, or some you can start to name it, can't you? And then you're keen to learn more about it and do it more. So I think that's kind of both of your experiences are kind of capture quite well how we see people coming into mentoring, the two sides. And I remember, Nigel, when we were talking before, you said when you actually were an entrepreneur and running a business, you didn't actually have a mentor at that stage, and you think the outcome would have been quite different had you had a mentor, and that was partly your motivation now for mentoring people.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that one up, Maya. Yeah, I think the reason why I say that with tongue in cheek is I think I missed opportunities. I had a very successful business, but I was in my late 20s and I hadn't realized the value of the true value of mentoring and what it could do for me. In my late 20s, I thought I had all the answers to all the problems in the world, and it wasn't a problem. It was bravado. I was of the mind that I could grow a business, and it was a very successful business. It grew to 15 million turnover with 400 employees across Europe. It was a really well-established business. However, God, did I miss some stuff along the way? And was I the person that I really wanted to be for the rest of my life during that journey? Potentially not. There was lots of failures. There was lots of learnings there. And what I recognize now, looking back on it, although I would say it took about probably till about year 8 when I realized that because I actually brought my three brothers into my business. And I realized that one of my brothers, that was my eldest brother. So there's 20 years between me and my eldest brother. Unfortunately, he's no longer with us. He died a year ago. But at the time when I grew up, he'd already left home. So we didn't have a strong relationship. So when we came together in the business, he retired from Cranfield University and started working in the business. We developed this relationship, and I realized at that time that I didn't have all the answers. And actually, there was some stuff in here that I could explore about who I was, what I was. But I think that there would have been, if I would have had a more critical friend, because he was part of the journey, somebody independently standing to the side saying, why don't you do something differently with that? What's your motivation for trying to achieve what you're trying to achieve? What's in your mind? What goals are you actually trying to deliver upon at the moment? And I think those style of questions would have led me to make some slightly different business decisions. One that I look back on, one big failure, we developed a piece of software that was that could easily have rivaled Salesforce today in terms of its compatibility and its growth. And we've developed it for our blue chip clients like Sony and Microsoft, etc. And I didn't spin it out. And having somebody knowledgeable in that space would have really given, and this is a bit that I think is a key learning for me. There's elements in here where you might be a good entrepreneur, but you might not have the experiences that you need in all areas in order to have that self-trust, then to trust your intuition, to have the belief, then to take that forward. And what I should have done is spin that business out, but actually I didn't know how to do it, and I didn't have the access or recognize in myself that I needed that support at that time, because actually it was on my if there's a negative against what I've achieved, that would be one of the, okay, that's a major failure in my results. So yeah, I can see where that if I would have had that opportunity, that would have made such a difference to the overall success of the organization and where it went in the future, for sure.
Thanks, Nigel. That's really, I was actually listening to a webinar the other day about a couple of people who had developed things that were almost the precursor of Facebook, or very similar to Facebook, and equally they had stories that they hadn't rolled it out. But I think it's also interesting around, and this is probably the topic of another webinar, but being ready to be mentored. So as a mentee, often we're quite self-sufficient and we think we can come up with all the answers ourselves. We should be able to do it, but actually being mentorable and being ready to be open to those questions and be challenged and think further, we have to be prepared and ready for that. And how can we do that? But I think we'll park that for now, and that will be the topic of another webinar. I think what's interesting also is that the impact of mentoring is often intangible. We don't always see the impact from our work as mentors. It's not kind of, I have this conversation and this happens, I can see the change. It often happens over a long period of time. And I know, Nigel, you talk about the fact that it takes time to lay the foundations of a relationship and get to know your mentee, and sometimes it feels during that time that you're not necessarily making progress. But and then Linda, also we had a conversation around when you first came into mentoring, you kind of felt it was a lot about having the answers, and that's quite stressful to feel that you have to have the answers for people. But then partly through the training that you did with us and some of the other learning around mentoring, you learned there was more about asking questions and listening and helping them come up with the solution. So I'm keen to hear from both of you what your greatest learning curve has been as a mentor, and how perhaps you've come to the realization after some time that, okay, what I'm doing does have an impact, and I am making an impact on this person. A little bit like, I think, Nigel, you were talking before, sorry, about dropping the pebble in the pond and the ripples coming out. So that's a slow process. But yeah, sorry, Linda, I interrupt.
No, that's fine. Yeah, the ripple effect, I guess. I think the greatest curve for me was actually just learning to listen and realizing that as a mentor, I didn't carry any answers with me. I didn't need to carry any answers with me. My role was basically to walk along with my mentee, listen to them, and ask the questions that would trigger them into their next action. Nothing to do with having a solution. I don't need to have the solution, because often in the case of entrepreneurs, and even just for life, each and every one of us has the answers that we need for whichever problem or situation that we're going through. We probably just need to get a little reassurance because you're doubting yourself. You're second guessing. Am I really sure about this? And at the point at which you are asked questions to cause you to think a little bit more about where you are and where you want to go, for example, then you're able to propel yourself there. And it has nothing to do with the mentor giving the solutions. In fact, the mentor is almost a cheerleader. The voice that keeps on asking the questions. Why, how, when, and you move on from there, as opposed to giving a solution.
And how, Linda, I'm curious how that is received by your mentees sometimes, because often when you talk to people about mentoring and what they want from it, they often say, I want a mentor to tell me what to do, to give me the answers, to make the connections, so there's almost an expectation sometimes that the mentor is kind of this all-knowing person who is going to tell me what to do, I'll do it, and I'll be successful. So how is that received when you're not coming in with the solutions?
I think as you get into that relationship, as you establish the relationship, and create the foundation for this mentoring relationship, it's making it pretty clear from the beginning that we're getting into this relationship. I might not have the answers. I could have some solutions. I could share with you some possible solutions. But even then, it's not solutions that you need to pick up. It's not things that you must pick up. For the mentee, it's things that they need to rationalize through. And that's where the questions are coming in. Why are we doing this? Why do we need to do this? How are we doing this? When should we do this? Who else do we need to involve to create this change that we're looking for, whatever that change may be for the entrepreneur? What structures can we put in place, which may not necessarily be things that I can give. It is solutions that they themselves know, depending on what type of business they're doing, on where you are in life. And the mentoring relationship is beyond, we are talking about mentoring entrepreneurs, but it's beyond entrepreneurship. It goes into everyday life and everyday living, because your business is your life for an entrepreneur. That's where you're getting your daily bread from. That's where all your employees are also getting their bread from. So it's finding that place and just knowing that we're getting into this. I truly have no questions. And I guess pretty much a lot like even a parent and child relationship. When your child comes to you, you don't necessarily have the answers. And you often have to tell them, can we read about that? Can we research about that? So knowing that you're not, just making it very clear that you are not all knowing.
Yeah, and I guess creating that space for a dialogue, that if someone's very much in their head, they might not be creating that space for, but with a mentor, it's holding that space, we often say. Thank you. Yeah. And Nigel, how about you? I know you've got a lot of different learnings.
Yeah,
I
think what's really interesting about Linda's, I think comments, and I absolutely 100% agree with you, Linda. I think there's a lot in here, and I think that one of the really important words here is it is a relationship. And what you bring as a mentor that's different from other disciplines is you bring an informed discussion into the room. So if you've got this experience of your past that is so in this instance, this context, it's entrepreneurship, you can bring that informed decisions that you've made in the past into that conversation. Trusting in that is quite important and really difficult during the first conversations you have with people. I think you mentioned, Maya, that part of for me, the very first discussion I have with everybody is all about, or anybody is about who we are and who we're going to be in this relationship. What type of relationship is it that we're going to have? And the be do have that we use at the Human Edge is, you know, in order to have, you need to do something, but on the journey you need to decide who you want to be, and who you want to be in that relationship is a really important key feature, because ultimately it can be seen as that you're having a conversation with a friend, and that because the relationship will grow. But in the first early stages of that conversation, you're having a purposeful conversation. It's boundaried. You might get together for an hour, that you've got to discuss something in particular. So there's purpose in that. So it's not a case of, but nothing's lost in that conversation. So actually, if that whole conversation is about you building relationship, which then gets you to understand who you are in that relationship, but also what the truth is in that relationship, meaning that's a very big word, but we all have different truths. So what I need to do when I'm engaging with a mentoring conversation is leave my assumptions at the door. I need to forget about things that I know or what I might believe or I might understand or what I might think, and enter into a conversation where the mentee is leading the conversation, and they're deciding what they want to talk about, and they're focusing on their needs. I'm there for them, I'm not there for me, and I'm not there in the character role of trying to give them the answers. So to speak to Linda's point succinctly, is part of my contracting, which the horrible term that we use in coaching and mentoring, is the process of having a discussion around what are our boundaries and how are we going to work together. Part of that is to be explicit and say, I can bring in knowledge and experience of things that I've had in the past if that's what you want me to do. If you don't want me to do that and you just want me to be a sounding board and explore, then that's absolutely fine as well. But actually what I'm not going to do is sit here and tell you what to do, because that's not how this relationship will work from my point. I'm not the right person for that. So being explicit but empathetic, being understanding of their needs and facilitative of their growth during the conversations, I think is really, really important. So suddenly you're in an open conversation, like Linda said, right early on, where you might be sat for 2/3 of, not the first session. The first session for me, if you imagine a circle, and in the circle you're dead center with the mentee, that might be the first starting point where you're sharing everything. Then as things start to develop, you might move to the edge of the circle, and then longer term you might move to the outside of the circle. And actually that might be a time when they then choose that's enough for the moment, and they say, okay, we've had enough sessions. And then in a year's time, your phone rings or you get an email saying, actually, can we pick up where we left off? Because that was what they needed. So for me, there's this central space in it, that point in the middle is about as much as we know about their entire life as well. So we can't possibly bring knowledge and experience and understanding and tell them how to run their own life, their own business, or what their truth should be. But what we can do is we can be there for them. We can learn as much as they do on the journey, and we can be as present as we possibly can do. And the number one thing I would leave with you is that if I would have been told this right early on, and my research looked to this, and my thesis analysed this, was what's the key element that we're looking to build here in order to aid an entrepreneur's development? And it was self-awareness. It was simply self-awareness. And if we can ask questions that lead into that, then actually that's a benefit. And sometimes we just got to expect that we might finish a conversation and feel, I don't know if I added any value there. And then at the next session or the next conversation you have, they come back with 5 points that are actually, these are things that have made a real difference in my life. So you've almost got to, I hate to say it, but trust in the process. You did
Really
quite a lot to say, Maya. Sorry.
Well, no, I'm just going to ask a follow-up question. So that's really interesting. So, and I'm just wondering then, in the process of building self-awareness in your mentee, do you build your own self-awareness, and how does that kind of process work?
Yeah, I think self-awareness, and yeah, absolutely. And that awareness of who I want to be during the conversations grows with the confidence. So the first few sessions, I mean, they're nerve-wracking, let's be honest. This is to say to anybody, you're going to sit down and have a conversation with somebody without any structure, without any agenda, without any content, and actually whatever comes out of that conversation is fine. That's a really I mean, for me being an introvert, that's a really terrifying prospect. But actually, a couple of questions that might crop up on those early stages. Things like I had a session yesterday with somebody who's asked for a conversation but wanted an exploratory conversation. So the framing was just want to explore and just want to. So but the very nature that they're asking for a question was, my first question to them was, so what's the big question that you'd love to answer during this session? And then you can sit back because they've asked for the session, they've got things that they want to explore. And I think that where my awareness then increases is knowing when to dip into challenge, knowing when to shut up and let the flow of the session, knowing when to just ask a challenging but prompting question. Because if it feels right, then it's the right thing to do. But then I guess in terms of my self-awareness, there was elements in there as that I had to understand really early on. I think this speaks to Linda's point as well. I wasn't there to fix them, and I'm not there to save them either. And this is that lovely term that Linda used with, I'm there to walk alongside them. I'm a guide. I've been there. I'm not living my experiences through them. I'm not toxic in any way. I'm there as a partner on their journey to support, to nurture. And I think just as importantly, and another massive awareness thing is I'm there to motivate. I'm there to get excited about their ideas, because they might have talked to 10 people and 10 people might have told them that their idea is a rubbish idea. But who are we, and especially when you're talking to, I'm 52 years old, especially when you're talking to a 20-something that's talking about new technology on their phone and this whole new, how they're going to use AI. I can facilitate a conversation. I know nothing about how to code AI. How can I possibly tell them what they should be doing? But what I can do is ask a deep question that makes them reflect. So for me, yes, I think that's a wonderful question you asked there, Maya. Is that it's, yeah, my awareness has grown during the whole the process of learning and talking with mentees.
It's a lot of vulnerability, and just making yourself vulnerable to each other. For this person that's coming in thinking that you have a solution and you don't, and you now need to just let them know that from the beginning and prompt them to ask the question. So you're making yourself very vulnerable to them, just as they are being vulnerable to you in this whole process. As you walk along with them, you discover things about yourself and you're like, okay, probably not. When we went through the Imarisha program, halfway through, we encountered COVID, and that just changed the dynamics of everything. How does this mentoring relationship go on? We had scheduled physical meetings. We were going through many things, but then COVID happened. So at that point, where am I as a mentor? How am I feeling? What are my fears? Can I really go out? Should I really go out? Are we safe to meet? Where can we meet? What can we do and what can't we do? And you begin to also discover yourself, because then how far it grows your patience, for example. I think even during my interview for purposes of the book, I talked about how my mentee went quiet on me at some point, but she was going through issues. I appreciate and thrive on communication. And so when you're not communicating, I get frustrated. And so that grew my muscle for patience and just, Linda, breathe in and breathe out through this. It's not about you. Don't push too hard. You've done what you need to do. Take a chill pill and just relax. When she's ready, she'll reach out to you. So that self-awareness that, okay, I'm getting impatient here, but I need to grow a little bit more patience. So things like that.
And it's interesting about vulnerability, because that came up a lot when we were kind of interviewing people for the book, and around if the mentor almost has to start showing that vulnerability, because that kind of creates a safe space then for the mentee to open up. If you don't do that as a mentor, then the mentee will, especially if they're an entrepreneur, they'll give you their elevator pitch. They'll say everything is fine, and it'll be quite difficult to get down to the real issues and the challenges, because they won't be opening up. They might be treating you more as an investor or someone they've got to impress. So maybe a quick question around that vulnerability. So as a mentor, how can you show that vulnerability to enable and to build the mentoring relationship, and maybe where the barrier is too?
I think Linda's frozen, so I'll jump in. I think vulnerability, it's just key. It's part of who. It's a real beneficial skill if you can bring that into any of your sessions. And vulnerability is, for me, is about being present, is about active listening, it's about being aware of what they're telling you and interpreting what they're telling you in the context of the conversation. And I think that's very much the case when we mentor internationally as well. You know, there's lots of, it's that circle with the dot in the middle. That's as much as I know about people's lives. Now, I'm very open, so I don't have a problem with sharing who I am, what I'm about, and I think that's really, that helps me build relationships really quickly, and they're sound relationships. I have people which are contacting me after years of mentoring relationships and programs that I've been involved on, just for a drop-in session, just to say hi, because we've built a relationship and they feel that safe space. I think that's the sort of the touchy-feely stuff, showing your emotions. If you care about something that somebody says, then showing that you care about it. Once you've had a conversation with somebody in a session, and then you happen to read a book or a paper that relates to that, drop them an email saying, actually, I've read this and I thought of you. This is something that, so you're caring about that relationship, you're caring about what you're talking about, and you're trying to facilitate people's journey through. I think on that touchy-feely side, that's our soft skills. I think on the harder skills side of things, we can create a safe space by saying what is unsaid. So it's that, okay, what does this relationship look like? How many times are we going to meet? Is this confidential? Especially if you're talking with entrepreneurs, which might have IP opportunities, you know, they might be looking to scale their product. Then actually you've got to be really sensitive around, they might not want to talk to you about this stuff because it's so confidential. Then that's fine. Then let's just ring fence that, and they'll only talk about themes. So what we're trying to do is to build an environment where people feel very comfortable with each other, and to that end, have a real appreciation that the relationship is there to work. It's there for everybody's interest. It's there for their safety as well as our safety. I hope I talked to your point there.
Yeah. Thanks, Nigel. And I think we've got Linda back now.
Sorry about that.
No problem.
My internet seems to have dipped. Yeah, so I was just saying it's about making yourself vulnerable and just letting them know that you probably have gone through similar situations, and letting them into what your life story is, in relationship to the business, in relationship to life. Because some of the times the relationship could be unstable because of, away from the business, in their personal lives, they could be going through something that then affects how they work. But are we then creating that safe space for each of us to know that this is a safe space? We're okay to share with each other, irrespective of what it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that just develops that thing called the relationship.
And that kind of loops back nicely to kind of the title of the webinar, Once a Mentor, Always a Mentor. And it kind of links to what I was saying earlier, that we find that people, if they come in as a mentee, especially to our programs, but kind of in general, they come in as a mentee, get a lot out of mentoring, want to give back as a mentor, and then they keep mentoring. So we kind of see this circular nature of mentoring. And from our programs, we've got a statistic that people who come in, they might not have ever mentored before, come in, mentor through, become a mentor, get training, are supported through one of our programs. And then on average, they'll go on to mentor, I think it's 3 people a year after that. So kind of they stay really involved in mentoring. It's almost like a hooked on mentoring. But actually then, Nigel, you had interpreted more as kind of, once a mentor, it's a relationship. So once you're a mentor, you're always a mentor to that person, even if the relationship isn't active, you still have that relationship. So I'm keen to hear from both of you, what has kept you in mentoring? So what do you get out of mentoring? Maybe, yeah. Nigel, if you want to start, and then Linda, or
I feel quite happy to. I think for me, the mentoring relationship, because it evolves, it's not something that's static. And if you live by the principle that we're here and we're on lifelong learning journeys, you can always become more aware, you can always build, you get something out of those relationships as much as the person that you're meeting with. And the mentee, I feel they see value in friendships that are structured, might be structured around their career, that might be structured around something that they have at that moment. And then what happens? I mean, I tend to focus on the personal, then the professional mentee, then the venture. So I start from the individual. So for me, when I enter into those relationships, I don't expect anybody to come back after years and pick up the phone, etc. But actually, that door's always open. So there's always opportunities for us to explore new worlds. And you see, what you see is people moving through their life. So from a rewarding point of view, being receptive to that is part of who I am, and I'm leaning very heavily into it. But from a feeding forward point of view, there's lessons that I've learned in my life that I can help with others. They may not be specifically relevant, but they're an informed piece of discussion that we can have that might actually save somebody some pain along the ways ahead where they're going, especially on the entrepreneurial context. So for me, I think it's and I think as certainly as I've got older in life, although I've had mentors all the way through, I think I get so much value from my mentoring relationships being a mentee that it's something that I want to do for others. And it puts a real smile on my face. I've had 3 calls this week with mentees that have been from years ago, and it's just wonderful. I mean, what isn't great with catching up with somebody and seeing people who last time you spoke to them, they were just getting married and having a baby, and they were entrepreneurial, and then you picking up the phone again or jumping on Zoom for an hour. and they're saying, actually, I've reached another crux in my life. I'm not sure which direction I want to go in now. So can I actually can I have a conversation with you just to explore what that might look like? And you start again, you start looking at the ikigai or the Venn diagrams and saying, where are you positioned? And you're there helping and supporting. And there's a mutual benefit, because you feel good at the end of these conversations. But the really important thing here is that you're not doing it for your own benefit. You're here for the individual's benefit. This is a byproduct, and whoever that mentee is, you're seeing them sort of prosper in their life, and that's got to be surely that's what we're here for. Money comes and goes, I can't take it with me, but actually, the relationships, I hope that'll be something that I can fondly remember in my later years.
Satisfaction of being part of someone else's journey on that. Well, yeah, Linda, keen to hear from you. What has kept you in mentoring?
It's the excitement of sharing in the celebrations, especially the celebrations, more than the dips that come along. But that every so often you get to have a conversation with somebody and they're going through a really exciting period in their personal lives, in their business, that you're able to celebrate together with them, that they're paying it forward as well, because they'll also be sharing stories of, oh, I'm carrying along these people, my employees are now doing this and doing this that they weren't doing before. So they're also mentoring. They've become mentors in the different spaces. So that's really exciting to see the growth in people, the impact that it has, that a business could have otherwise probably closed, but it continues to flourish 2 years, 3 years down the line, probably 10 years down the line. A business is growing. Somebody's growing. They've proceeded to probably study something else as they discovered themselves some more on the entrepreneurial journey. So that's very exciting, and that it can just keep on giving.
Yeah.
And sometimes you really, I mean, you try and pull away from some of these things, and then you get a phone call, you get the email, you get the WhatsApp message, and you're like, okay, probably I can't run away too far.
So once a mentor, always a mentor. Yes.
Always a mentor.
Great. And so a final kind of parting question for both of you. We had a couple of people, I think, at the beginning who were interested in mentoring, and a couple of people also running or looking to run mentoring programs, and in that, I guess, motivate, inspire their mentors in the process. So what advice would you give to anyone wanting to improve or perfect their skills as a mentor, to flex their mentoring muscle a bit more?
For me, it would be look for opportunities to be able to learn and interact with other mentors. The opportunity that I had through the Imarisha program, for example, was very exciting because the mentors came from all walks of life. Bankers, people working in community space, entrepreneurs, doing different things, trainers and coaches. The mentees themselves came from extremely diverse backgrounds as well. So that made it very exciting because we had fashion designers, we had waste management, people involved in waste management, people involved in farming, people that were doing catering businesses. So very, very diverse backgrounds that were feeding into all of us when we got together and shared our different experiences as mentors and as mentees. So that gave a lot of strength and validation as well, because when we got together for the 2 face-to-face meetings and people were sharing the different experiences, even with their mentees, for example, as mentors, you discover, okay, probably my relationship isn't as bad, and I have something to learn from somebody else. I could actually learn something else from somebody else. The interpersonal interactions were very personal as well. So you got to learn from different people. You got to bounce things off. So the support that you get in an organized environment as well makes a lot of difference. And that 4 years down the road, we can still communicate with each other, interact with each other. We are able to give each other business and things like that. And this is the mentees together with the mentors. So you're creating and expanding your social network, your business network. So look for something that's structured.
Yeah. So some structured training and learning, and then surround yourself by and be inspired by other mentors and mentees is what I'm hearing from you. Nigel,
Yes.
just briefly.
Very, very briefly. Okay. So I would say if I was to say, before I entered into my journey of within academia and as a professional coach and mentor and facilitator, I would say that some of the tips that would have been of most useful to me would have been: suspend your assumptions before you enter into any conversations, recognize your own biases. It's a reflective process. So following each of your sessions, take time to think about what happened, take time to understand who you were during that conversation, and perhaps even have a notebook where you write down your thoughts, what actually occurred during that session, with a view to driving or entering into the conversation. So if you're suspending your biases and your assumptions, and then you're entering into a conversation where what you're trying to do is build self-trust in the mentee so that they can carry on with their journey under their own steam most effectively. And part of that process is creating self-awareness. So ask questions which are careful. You know, we don't want to offend anybody along the journey, but actually they can be challenging. A question along the lines of, are you trying to fix a situation? Is a challenging question, as opposed to, you know, from what I can see, you're trying to do everything here and do something for somebody else, etc. So you're putting the questions out there. So be sort of selective with your questions. But if it feels right and you're there in the best interest and you're trying to build this self-trust so the mentee can move forward, it can't be that wrong. And at the very least, you're building awareness that person wouldn't have had unless they would have been in this conversation with you. So those 3 things, I think: sort of suspend assumptions, work in the best interests of the individual for self-trust, so that they can build their own self-trust and build self-awareness. And that accounts for us as well as mentors and mentees, depending on what side of the relationship you are.
Great. Thank you both. Coming up to almost to the end, I think, so Hannah, you've got something to share, and we've just got a couple of questions in here. But so one around the difference between coaching and mentoring. We don't have time to touch on this now, but we do have a whole webinar. I think it's the May one, which is talking about this subject. So I encourage you to come to that one, because it's the main topic of the discussion. And then there's a couple of other questions in here. Top 3 qualities to make an effective mentor. That's very much covered in the book as well, which Johanna's just about to talk about.
Yes.
In addition to what we've been discussing today.
Thank you, Maya, for this transition. So, and thank you, Nigel and Linda, for sharing your experiences and your insights and some ways forward. And just to also share a few resources that we have on our side for you to strengthen your mentoring skills, should you be interested in doing so. We have first our mentoring entrepreneurs guide that you can buy on Amazon, on your local store on Amazon, in ebook version or paperback. But also what we have is this mentoring skills and practice course, which is an online course where you will get to have all these reflective questions and time actually to build your self-awareness, but as well, this course includes 2 live sessions where we just talked about with Linda and Nigel about the fact that it's really important to have this safe space to hone your skills and your new learnings and your new mentoring skills. And this is what those practice sessions are about. So this is included in this on-demand course, which is roughly 10 hours long, and that you can take at your own pace. So I'll drop you an email after this webinar with the links, so you can check these resources out. And regarding Ranya's question about difference between mentoring and coaching, yes, indeed, we have an upcoming webinar about that. It's actually the next one, Maya, the one in March.
Got it wrong.
Sorry, not May one. Sorry, May, because the March one is about mentoring entrepreneurs. So again, I will also send you the agenda for the upcoming Fireside Chat, and feel free to register as soon as you get the email. And thank you very much for being here. I'd like to share, if we have time, just a few last questions. Sorry, I'm trying to get out of my screen. It's on Menti again. So dropping the link in the chat now. There's just 2 questions. If you can take the time to open the link, and we would like to know after this session, what is one reflection or learning that you're taking away? Please.
Are we going to show it on the screen or?
Oh, yes, sorry.
Yeah.
To share my screen, it's too many things at the same time.
For those who thank you very much for being part of the webinar, and a big thank you to Nigel and Linda for sharing your time and insights with us. And yeah, it's been really interesting to talk to you both. I hope you've all got as much of it from it as I have.
Right, and there's another question about yes, the rate, how you would score this session. Feel free to, after responding to that question, to jump at the next question, to the next question. Sorry. Suspend your judgment. Yes.
Came through loud and clear, Nigel. We'll have another webinar at some point on toxic mentoring, perhaps, and where people don't suspend their judgment.
I would love that. I would. There is a couple of people that come to mind, but I don't think they would want to be involved. But no, they absolutely. I think toxic's obviously it is a toxic word, but actually, are we there for the right reasons, and or are we reliving through our mentees in there? There's a lovely subject matter around that, and I think it's you know that my feeling, Maya, that it's something that I think people, if we're going to talk about all the good stuff, we should also talk about the stuff which isn't so good. And you know, mentoring is a wonderful opportunity for us to support others, but sometimes it can go a little bit too far, and that can be sort of just narcissistic tendencies. So yeah, there's lots in that space. It would be a very interesting conversation, I'm sure.
we'll schedule that for a later point. Thanks again, everyone, for being here. Do connect with us on social media and on LinkedIn if you haven't already. And yeah, hopefully see you at the next one. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Take care.
Bye.